The Energizer Bunny versus Garfield, the cat. Pay attention to energy levels. Let's zoom out a little and get a more holistic view of the person you are trying to get into rapport with. Of course, you need to be able to notice where this person is in terms of emotional state and Corfu levels. Later on in this book, I will teach you to identify different emotional states in a lot more detail than is possible based purely on breathing. The best way to determine somebody's energy levels, however, is to observe this posture and breathing, and use your prior knowledge of the person in question. Some people are a little withdrawn before lunchtime. They get to work in the morning, mumble something resembling "good morning," and sink into their chairs. They are wearing invisible do not disturb signs until 11 or so, and it's not until after lunch, or their 5th cup of coffee, that they actually open their eyes and crawl out of their shells. This doesn't mean their work is any less good. It just means the social aspects of their beings I need longer to kick into gear. These people rarely have particularly fast bodily tempos. Even after 5 cups of coffee, all that does is make them jittery. They're like Garfield, the cat. We're all in that mood from time to time, but for some of us it is more of a permanent state. Then, of course, we have their opposites, the people who are always full of energy, perseverance, and determination. They run 6 miles to work each morning, swoop into the office with a big smile half an hour before everybody else shows up, and almost never miss their lunchtime workouts, and at the end of the day, they run all the way back home. I once had a colleague who was like that. He was, or rather is a father of 7. That hour he spent alone at the office every day after he had run or cycled to work, was spent on editing his home videos from the weekend, including D&D menus and extra audio tracks. He's nothing like Garfield. He's more of an Energizer Bunny type. Garfield and the Energizer Bunny can have a hard time getting along. You might be one of those people who shows up at work bursting with energy. If you encounter a sleepy and introverted colleague, whose approval you happen to be in desperate need of for a project, it might be a good idea to tone yourself down a bit. Try not to be enthusiastic enough for both of you, at least, at first. If you turn up with a loud cheer, fresh from the gym, spilling protein powder all over his laptop, you're almost guaranteed a no. It goes the other way, too. If you're one of those slow, cautious people, you could probably use a way to fire yourself up. It's likely that your lethargy is a little annoying to the more energetic people around you. Fortunately, there is an easy way to fix this. Energy exercise. Do you remember how you used body language to make positive change happen for your friend when she was down? It worked because our physical and mental states are connected. You can use the same principle to change your own mood or energy level. You simply start acting as if you were more energetic or happy. Imagine the face you would have, and how you would be sitting, standing, or moving your body if you had a lot more energy than you do right now. At first you may feel a little strange, but you'll soon notice that you actually are more energetic and positive than just before. Let the bodily reactions that you can control, what you're doing with your muscles and motion, activate processes in your brain. Fake it till you make it, basically. Or, as the famous psychologist William James put it already in 1922, in this proto-self-help book on vital reserves, The Energies of Men, the gospel of relaxation, action seems to follow feeling, but really action and feeling go together, and by regulating the action, which is under the more direct control of the will, we can indirectly regulate the feeling, which is not. So the best way to make yourself happy when you're not is to sit as if you hadn't a care in the world. Look around with a happy face, and act and talk as if you were happy. Energy levels are not very difficult to figure out. It's more a matter of common sense than detailed analysis for adaptation of your communication tools, even though the results will be the same. Of course, remember what I've taught you about observation, following and establishing rapport. Is 8 o'clock in the morning really the right time to show somebody your wonderful report full of good ideas? Could you schedule the meeting for after lunch, when you know the other person will be more receptive? If that won't work, you have to take care to present yourself in a way that matches well with the way the other person is feeling. If you don't, you could face stiff resistance, not because your ideas aren't good, but because your energy levels are not well matched with the person you're talking to. Say it like you mean it. Be consistent in your words and actions. When we communicate with somebody, we cause different emotional states in that person. Whether we want to or not, it can be done intentionally, like when we tell somebody something to make the person happy or angry or surprised. Expressions we want an emotional response to could be the following. Did you hear what happened? I can't stand Adam Sandler. I love you. Causing emotional states can also be done unintentionally, like when what we say starts off a chain of emotional associations in the person we're talking to, without our even knowing it. How's it going? Is something we often say with no purpose beyond acknowledging the other person. But if things are bad enough, even an innocent question like that can cause somebody to burst into tears. We also change people's emotional states by displaying, and hence projecting, our own emotions. If we're happy, people around us tend to be in good cheer. If we're down, so are they even when we don't say anything. Often we'll can ask people explicitly to enter different emotional states, cheer up, calm down, to make them understand what we mean, and to seem credible. We have to project the emotion we're asking for while we say these kinds of things. If you want to calm somebody down, the wrong way to do it is to grab his shoulders, shake him about, and scream calm down damn it, into his face. If you want to make somebody relax, you need to be relaxed. As a parent, I am well aware of how incredibly difficult this can be at times, but it is important nonetheless, to get the person you're talking to into the emotional state you're asking for. You have to exemplify it and show what you mean. You're better off yawning while you ask, "Are you tired?" too, than saying it while you're doing your exercise routine, at least if you want to provoke tiredness. If you want to calm somebody down, you have to radiate calmness yourself. Don't speak too loudly, avoid fidgeting, and make sure you're breathing deeply, not at the top of your chest. If you want somebody to feel confident, you can't just talk about being confident, you have to act like you are confident. By doing this, you're also making a very clear suggestion, that is, a proposition or instruction given to start processes in the unconscious mind of the other person. There will be more about this clever stuff later on. It's not just about showing what you mean. You make the person understand what you're talking about in a direct, emotional way, and you show him that it's not such a big deal to get there. By establishing emotional understanding, you also create an intimate and personal experience of the same feeling in the person you're communicating with. Talking about something means relating to it on an external and analytical level, but understanding it emotionally is an internal, personal experience. Internal experiences are always the strongest. Just think of the difference between talking about a loving hug as opposed to getting one. Which would you prefer? If there is a disconnect between the words spoken and what is communicated by body language and tone of voice, the wordless message will take priority. If somebody shouts at you to calm down, two different emotional states are communicated, the external one the words, and the internal one, the experience. Which one will you follow? Does a situation like this make you relax, or wind you up? You don't need to be an expert mind reader to realize that the latter is the right answer. Opinion Aikido, the noble art of agreeing with people. Another powerful tool for making rapport is to agree. I know, it sounds like something a pushover would do, but I mean it. Here's how to do it. Try to find some attitude or opinion held by the other person that you are prepared to agree with. This is extra important if you are also intending to try to get this person to change his or her mind about something later on. If you're looking to inform others about how things really are, you risk running into resistance if you tell the other person she is wrong. She'll enter defense mode instead of listening. The worst thing you can do if you want to convince somebody to adopt your opinions is to confront her directly. Rapport is all about making the person you're communicating with realize that you understand her, that you're just like her. That goes for opinions, too. Of course, you shouldn't do this to the extent that you have to betray your own values and principles. However, there is usually something you can agree on. If you encounter somebody in a negotiation wherein your positions are diametrically opposed, perhaps at least you both like votes, or The Witcher 3, even if you think the other person has completely misunderstood the issue being discussed or is simply out of his mind, you can still always agree that if you were in his position, that is, if you had misunderstood everything, too. But of course you never say this, you would feel the same, as he does. Even if you're dealing with a real crook, it's still true to agree that I would do the same thing if I were you. The simple words "if I were you, I would react in exactly the same way" can work wonders for your rapport. If you think about it, it's really obvious that if you were the other person, you would do what he's doing, but that's not how it is received. Rather, we take it as evidence that somebody understands us. Finding something to agree to, and starting from that, is the same kind of principle as you would use in the martial art of Aikido. If you try to get in the way of the other person's opinions by saying, "You're wrong," you'll only start a mental wrestling match that will end up being exhausting and unproductive for both of you. Instead of getting in the way, when you say, "I feel the same way you do," you stand next to her. The energy from the other person, which you would have spent all your efforts on containing, can now be used to propel you both toward a different destination. You adopt the role of a follower rather than presenting an obstacle. The person you're talking to won't mind at all, since you're now suddenly working together to reach a common goal instead of struggling to determine who is right. You're in rapport, you are in the same place and share the same understanding. Aikido is all about not getting in the way of your opponent's momentum, and instead using it to topple your opponent if necessary. Shakespeare for president. To a great extent, maybe entirely, our reality is constituted by our ideas of what is true. To manipulate somebody's beliefs is, therefore, to influence that person's reality. Skilled politicians have been aware of this for a long time. When you're in the opposition, it's always best to begin by agreeing with the more popular opinion before formulating the changes for the better that you would like to add. In Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar, Brutus, the man who had been closest to the Roman dictator, is accused of murdering Caesar, a crime he is guilty of, et tu, Brute. But at Caesar's funeral, Brutus gives a passionate speech that convinces the people he has actually done a good deed. No matter how much Brutus loved Caesar, he realized that Caesar's deluded leadership was leading them all to ruin. Despite understanding the consequences for him personally, he decided this was the only solution. His heinous crime was motivated by his love for Rome, not by any hate for Caesar. You simply have to love a guy like that, so the people are prepared to forgive him. However, Mark Antony is waiting in the wings and also has a speech prepared for the funeral. He wants to get Brutus convicted of murder, so he chooses to speak last, giving him the opportunity to hear what Brutus has to say first. When Antony's turn comes, he begins his speech with a surprising statement. He agrees with everybody, praising Brutus as a man of honor. Once Antony has made it clear to everybody that he agrees with them, the stage is set for his rhetoric. During the speech, he uses clever emotional arguments to make the listeners conclude that the murder was unjustified and that the murderer should be banished. If he'd started off by saying that his actual opinion on the matter, nobody would have listened to him. So instead of getting in the way and being an obstacle, he begins by agreeing. In order to be able to take on the role of a follower, Mark Antony must have held a black belt in opinion Aikido, and with rhetorical skills of that level, Shakespeare, who wrote the whole thing, should have entered politics. First agree, then lead. In summary, you shouldn't betray your own values and principles when you use opinion Aikido. You shouldn't have to lie. Sitha, all rapport has to be based on sincerity. Sometimes, finding common opinions or values is no problem, but there are situations in which it can be a lot more difficult. In negotiations and debates, the different parties are assumed to hold opposing opinions. If you're too opposed to the issue under discussion or negotiation, it can be a good idea to find another issue for which you might have some common ground. If you can't find any common values at all, which could happen if you're having an argument with somebody in a tinfoil hat, you can always say, if I were you, I'd feel exactly the same as you do. I would be upset about the radio transmissions they were sending to my teeth, as well. Naturally, this is always true. If you were the other person, of course, you would feel the same way. If somebody storms into the room with a cloud of anger about her head, slams her fist down on the table, and shouts, "This is unacceptable," the best thing for you to do is get up, put whatever you're doing down with a loud bang, and loudly state, "I agree, I understand completely why you think it's unacceptable. If I were you, I'd think it was too." That is, use opinion Aikido, while matching her body language, tone of voice, and energy level. Then, after lowering the volume and tempo of your voice a little, and perhaps even sitting down on the edge of the table, you continue, "But do you know what? I think there's a way we can solve this." You start leading, both toward a more suitable emotional state and toward the new approach or idea you have that you know might change her idea of the situation. Apart from setting a solid foundation for solving the problem together, this is a great way to extinguish the fire in people with quick tempers. A person who is angry is looking for opposition, a struggle, and wants you to get in her way so she can direct her anger at you. By affirming her anger, claiming she is entitled to be upset, and agreeing with her, you can quickly subdue her anger. Your goal, as is always the case with rapport, is to make the other person realize you understand her, that you feel the same and are the same as her. This way, she'll also be much more willing to listen to your suggestions. If you seem to be in the same place, the other person will make more of an effort to see the value of your ideas. Since that's a way to stay in rapport, if I were you, I would feel exactly the same. There's nothing to it. Opinion kung fu, crouching and hidden but style. Connecting different propositions. A simple technique for seemingly agreeing and making people go along with possibly dubious argumentation is to use the word and instead of but. The word but signals reservation, while and ticks phrases and propositions together. The linking function of and is so strong that it makes no difference if the two propositions being connected actually contradict each other. Good politicians have learned how to use and linkages. Compare these two situations, where Swift, the politician, begins by scoring some quick points by talking about something everybody considers important. Situation 1. Swift, we want to improve healthcare, so we have to raise taxes. Gulliver, we want to improve healthcare, too, but we want to lower taxes. Situation 2. Swift, we want to improve healthcare, so we have to raise taxes. Gulliver, I agree with you that we need to improve healthcare, and that's why we want to lower taxes. In the first debate, Gulliver positions herself on the other side of the fence by using the word but, which means she is contradicting Swift. By doing this, Gulliver is losing a lot of votes. In the second debate, Gulliver will score the same easy points as Swift, despite not having changed her message, and despite it still being the opposite side of Swift's, and gives any proposition an almost causal quality, where what follows after the end is perceived as a near unavoidable consequence of whatever precedes it. The reservation expressed by but has the opposite effect.